Welcome to FEO on the Air, the voice of the festivals and events industry in Ontario. This week, it's FEO Masterclass with your host, FEO CEO Dave MacNeil.
Hello and welcome back to FEO on the Air. We're so glad to be back with you, and we'll be joining you every Tuesday at 11 o'clock with a potpourri of information that we hope is going to be useful for all of the festival and event planners around the province. I don't know if everybody has read our memos, but we've got 4 exciting sessions that we're going to do in rotation. We're starting off today with a masterclass, which I'll be hosting. And we'll be hosting industry experts to talk about topics that are important to all of us in the industry. It'll be sort of a one-on-one with a few guests to talk about their experiences. And each week, once a month, we'll bring in the industry experts. Following that, we'll have Jay Nyhouse from our office, and he'll be doing a supplier spotlight, featuring suppliers that are in our chain and different offerings that they have available to all of the festivals and events across the province. The one after that, we're going to do Festivals Helping Festivals SOS. And no, it's not Save Our Sinking Ship. It's Share Our Stories. We're going to highlight festivals across the province who have come up with against issues, how they got out of them, share their successes, and have a really good, engaging conversation. And Marnie Lapierre from our board is going to host those sessions. And then our last session that we'll do of the 4 that we'll do in rotation is called Experience Ontario. And what we're going to do there is we're going to go around to different areas in the province. We're going to talk to RTO and DMO leaders. We're going to highlight 3 or 4 festivals in the area. And then we're also going to talk to Troy Young and his team from Attractions Ontario, who's going to talk about other things to do when you're in that area to extend your stay, to stretch out your stay, and to help with the tourism across the province. So those are our 4 main categories, subcategories under our FEO on the Air. And today we're happy to welcome Darren Winger, who is a Regional Development Advisor for the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Gaming. A lot of you know Darren from our conference. Darren, welcome. We were sorry to miss you and all of the ministry personnel at our conference this year.
Yeah.
And I know you had this session on TREIM all ready to go, but with the holdbacks and the election call, you weren't able to join us. But we're glad you're here today and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's great to get out of caretaker mode and get back in the field and start sharing the story. Yes, the intent was to do this at the FEO conference, but now we're going to have the ability to tape it and share it on YouTube. And I'm sure you can explain all the different platforms it'll be on. So not only yourselves who watch during the day, but also, for many times in the next couple of months, especially you're trying to, plan grants or even plan your festivals, to have a look at this and have it as a reference tool. So Jay, if you want to click off the slide, please, that would be great. Yeah, so next slide, please. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about the value of collecting data and what is an economic impact model, the importance of good data, talk a little bit about TREIM and how easy it is to use TREIM, which is a free offering from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Gaming. And then we're going to have a panel discussion. And I would just like to thank the panelists in advance for coming on. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of the comments and hear some of their stories and best practices. So we'll be getting to that once I go through the slide deck on TREIM. Next slide, please, Jay. So what is a tourism economic impact model? Well, we're really looking for what is the total impact that your festival creates on the local economy. What are the overall financial contributions of tourism to the local economy? For example, job creation, and how can you calculate the number of jobs that actually your festival and other festivals in the region actually are created and support through tourism? And then also the tax revenue that is created, the new money that is coming into your community because of your festival or special event. And then looking at a breakdown of where the impacts are. And we're going to talk about some of the key areas that are specific, I think, for festivals when you are going out in sponsor opportunities and securing sponsors, in dealing with your municipality and having to go to council, working with your DMOs or your economic development commissions. So there's a lot of things to consider. And then just the whole multiplier effect about initial tourism spending leads to further economic development. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the new money that is circulated in the community from spending. So when you're looking at data in our minds, it's about a tourist is defined as anyone coming to your event 40 kilometers or further. And obviously, we're going to get into some of the data looking at hotels, restaurants, attractions, and transportation. And on the TREIM report, we'll also talk about direct impact and the indirect impact that you can secure. So keeping in mind about that 40K, what I love to do and tell all festivals is go a little bit old school and pull out a map, look at the scale at the bottom, and figure out what 40K is. You may have an old metal compass lying around that you used when you were a lot younger in school. I'm not sure how many are out there nowadays used in school, or even putting a string on a pencil and putting your festival location on the map and then drawing a circle around that pinpoint to showcase what 40 kilometers and out is further. So for example, when I had this discussion with one of our panelists, Kelly, in the town of Amherstburg, when they do the 40 kilometer, people who live in Lakeshore, which is about a 25 minute away ride, is over 40K, or anyone coming from Chatham, Kent. So it's really good to know who in your circle outside of 40K would be considered as a tourist. And they could be day trippers or they could be overnight stayers. And also another thing to consider too is if you're a border community, like I'm in Windsor, Kelly's in Amherstburg, you look at Niagara Falls, anyone coming over an international border is considered a tourist. So coming across the Ambassador Bridge or, the Detroit Tunnel or the new Gordie Howe Bridge, they would be considered a tourist. Even though they're just coming for the day, they are considered a tourist. So they would actually be rolled into the numbers for any economic impact survey like the TREIM report. Same thing holds for people in Ottawa. I think Louise on the call. So anyone who comes over from Gatineau or from the Quebec side, they would be considered a tourist coming to an Ontario event. And the same looking at the border of Kenora, Sioux Lookout, anyone coming from Manitoba to their event. So please keep that in mind, and definitely take a map, draw your circle, and post it somewhere. And for people who are more tech savvy, there is Maptitude and other apps out there where you can do something similar. So please feel free to reach out on that. Next slide, please, Jay. So again, it's about the new money. So the tourist visits a theater production as an example. And then where is the new money coming into the community from a tourist outside of 40K? Obviously, the ticket sales, accommodation, dining, local attractions. What other local attractions are they coming and spending money at to extend their stay? And hopefully the more attractions that are piggybacked on that visit will encourage people to stay overnight too, which goes into adding more accommodation nights. And then are there any transportation services when you're dealing obviously with larger communities going to Toronto and you're going to one event to another, you may need taxis or Ubers or public transportation or ride shares. Next slide. So we talked about direct and indirect costs, and here's some great examples about how money circulates in the community. And you can read all, the different things on the slide. We talked a little bit about employment earlier. Construction renovations, if the theater needs renovating or you're making enhancements to your festival site, any professional services that you're using, are secondary, not immediate to the festival, but definitely through the ongoing operation of the festival, whether it be any legal requirements or, contacting your marketing services, accounting services. So those are just some of the impacts. And this is where your local economic development departments really get geeked out in a little way, is about not only those initial impacts, but also the indirect. And I'll show you example when we talk about a TREIM report about some of those indirect costs and indirect impacts that they love to see. Next slide, please. And here are two quotes about data. And many times, you hear the comment, garbage in, garbage out. But what we're really trying to do when collecting data is to avoid bias or poor quality information of inputs that will result in similar quality of outputs. So the better, more tight the data is going into whatever tool you're using, the better data and the better results will come out and be more specific to what you're looking for. So the one comment that I love, that input does matter. It's far more efficient and effective to get the right inputs than it is to improve and polish the wrong ones. It's just adding more work if you're getting bad data in, because the data that you're going to use will be second guessed, whether it's going to a sponsor, going to council. And we'll hear a good council story coming up in the panel discussion. So pretty much in my mind, the result, it's smarter to invest your time and money and energy in finding the right outputs. And we'll have some great examples, as I said, in the panel discussion. Next slide, Jay. So in creating a research plan, there's a whole number of areas, obviously, the end results that you would like to get. And we'll talk about TREIM, but when you look at the others, you may want to know more about program satisfaction or visitor satisfaction, the resources that you're going to need, technology volunteers. You're going to have to train the volunteers if they're going out and getting the data. But what we've tried to do is try not to make it too complex. And the TREIM, pretty much the two highlighted areas, we need to know your number of visitors, and that's the number of visitors, not the overall number going to your event, but the number of visitors over 40 or outside of that 40K radius. That's why it's so important to do that circle on a map and know where your people are coming from. So we're trying to make it not too complex, and it depends upon what inputs you have and what inputs you or what outputs you want to receive from your festival. So what do we put data into TREIM? Flip the slide, please. The number of visitors can be determined through ticket sales data, gate counts, reservation details, police crowd estimates, aerial photos. But they have to be used in unison, because some obviously can get you numbers, but can they give you the visitor origin, which is the next column? Because you will need to know where your individuals are coming from, whether it is put into TREIM or actually separately, just you use it yourself, trying to figure out where your market is coming from. I think we have Jordan on the line. I wanted to talk about gate counts for a minute. One of my volunteer hats in the summer, I do a lot of bike valets at community festivals, and it's a great way, one, for me and my community to get out and visit festivals, see what's going on, see what the new trends are in the festival industry. Also, I'm a cycling advocate, so it's an opportunity to talk to people who attend the event, to actually talk about cycling. Where you rode from? Did you have a challenge getting there? But in the gate counts, the one event I wanted to talk about was not only counting people going in, but people going out at the same time. I think a lot of festivals, count going in, but you forget about maybe some of the impacts or benefits of doing that in and out and on an hourly basis, actually doing the subtraction from the people coming in to figure out what your on-site count is. Jordan, are you online? Do you want to come in and tell us some of your successes about using both the in and the not only counting in, but counting out? And it's not necessarily economic impact, but it does affect your event planning.
Yes, thank you, Darren. So for the LaSalle Strawberry Festival, we have two gates that we have our attendees come in through, and people can purchase tickets online in advance as well as purchase at the gate. So we have two lines that go through at each gate, and we have security that is at the gates that will click people coming in as well as people that are coming out. And so the reason that this is very successful for us from an emergency management standpoint is that we're able to get a good idea of how many people are inside the festival area at one point in time. So we have Border City EMS that attends for medical emergencies. We have the LaSalle Police Service that does attend as well. And our Friday night fireworks display brings in many participants that are coming into the festival, which can lead to capacity issues from a security standpoint, where if there are issues that are happening with the teenagers that decide to fight each other on site over in the carnival rides, we are able to maintain the capacity for this event, which allows for clear access for LaSalle Police to go and attend to any emergencies, as well as the security, or if there's any medical emergencies that Border City EMS is able to successfully get through to where the situation that's arising, because we're able to maintain our capacity. So we do have periods of time throughout the festival where we potentially need to stop admitting people into the festival until somebody has left, because we've reached our capacity and we don't want to get to a point where we're overcrowded. So from an emergency standpoint, keeping track of those coming in and out is very important.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great to see you. It's been a while.
Me too.
Also in visitor origin, besides some that are listed, I know there are some festivals that are looking at using QR codes, and we'll talk a bit about that in a little bit later, but actually having QR codes at each of the entrances and encouraging people to use their phones and click on it. And that goes, into a prizing situation, but also where you can collect postal codes so you know where people are originating from. Next slide, Jay. So what does the TREIM report include? And this is sort of a quick snapshot about what the key page of the TREIM report is. So you're going to see on the left-hand side under industry, those are direct and indirect costs, and that's where some of those categories will really geek out the economic development officers. But in regards to festivals, I really want you to look at the ones that we've enlarged. Arts and entertainment and recreation, accommodation services, and food and beverages. So these are some of the dollars that we can actually extract once you put in how many visitors from 40K come to an area and what impacts they will have on these three areas. And what I would strongly encourage, whether you're planning on using this for sponsorship or going to council or even in grant applications, is the art of storytelling. So what do those numbers really mean to your local community? And having some stories. And I wanted to share one testimonial and I've changed the organization name in the community, but it'll give you a sense, and this was put into a grant application. But it's one thing to say, oh, accommodation services are 150,000, but we need to hear stories, whether it's going to council or in a grant, about the impacts that it had on a hotel provider. And we'll talk about that. So here is one testimonial that someone submitted, and it really tells a story about the impact on a small rural community. Our partners' voices are the best demonstrator our value to the tourism economy of our community. Alex, the owner of a local hotel and partner of a festival since 1980. It was apparent early on in this little theater festival could have a huge impact on not just the restaurant industry, but the town as a whole. The theater has helped shape Port into the town that supports arts and culture and leads the way into new and exciting partnerships. My grandparents, then my parents, and now my wife and I are thrilled to be part of what goes on at the theater every year. We plan our staffing levels around whether or not there is a show on a particular day. We thrive because the theater thrives. I look forward to working with the theater for many generations to come and give them a standing ovation for what they have done so far. So that's a really strong testimonial. Could it have a little bit more data in there? Sure, but that just gives you an idea, and it doesn't have to be that long. But really talking about the impacts that a local business has secured because of the festival event that is running. So I just wanted to share that, and we'll talk a little bit about stories later on. Next slide, please. Now, also, the second page of the TREIM report will also talk about your GDP and about the impact of taxes that were created federally, provincially, and municipally. This will be very important when going and doing conversations with council if you have any issues, and Kelly will share a story a little bit later. Also, when you're doing a TREIM report or an economic impact report, I would also encourage you to go to your DMO and maybe they can have a conversation with multiple festivals so they can help create a larger story about not only your data, but the data of many festivals in the area and the impacts that festivals and events have on your community. So let's get to the TREIM model. Next slide, Jay. So here is the link to get right to the site, or you can just Google TREIM Economic Impact Model, Province of Ontario, and it'll give you an overview of what it is, the features, the benefits, and sort of walk you through the process. Next slide. And this is just going to be a quick how to get to where you need to go. What we recommend for festivals and special events is clicking the visitor spending prompt. Next slide. Then we will encourage you to go to only the number of visitors is known. And we're just assuming that the main key data point that you're going to input into your TREIM model would be the number of visitors outside of 40K. Next slide. To identify your location, it's done by RTO. So you would find out which RTO you were a part of. For example, in Windsor, Essex, we're part of RTO 1. So if I was doing this, I would click RTO 1 as the travel region, and I would ensure that you'd want it for the year that had just completed, so 2024. Next slide. So we have the RTO in, we have the year, and then to simplify it, because the report can be very large, and for our purposes, I think you want to keep it tight. So you really wouldn't want to, we'll X out no for household spending and business investment, but the property tax impact, yes, as we talked about in that previous slide. Next slide. And then pretty much once you have your calculation of how many visitors from 40K outside, you would put it under Ontario. And if you have other numbers like from the US and overseas, please feel free to add them in. But if you just want to keep it simple, you can just do the Ontario visitors. But if you have the rest of Canada and the US and overseas, please include them. I know some festivals in the GTA, they have heavy numbers on the overseas. So please include that in your data. And then next slide, press submit and your report is done. It's as simple as that. The key thing is getting the right data so you know exactly how many individuals from outside of 40K are coming to your community. Next slide, Jay. So it's important to check your report for accuracy. So we have a couple examples here that we've taken. So the accommodation services, to say to council, oh, we brought in $150,000 hotel rooms. Well, let's take that down a little bit further. With your DMO, you can actually ask them, what the average room rate is. So you can actually state that your event created 751 rooms, and then going back to just checking for accuracy, going to a couple of your hoteliers and finding out on that weekend, and if you have a partnership with them, hopefully they're tracking that too, about whether your event brought in how many rooms, and then getting a testimonial on that. And it's the same with the food and beverage, $31 per person, and just going to some of your restaurant food and beverage suppliers and saying, this weekend, did you see an input? How much were they spending? And then you can just get some collaboration to those numbers. One thing to keep in mind, whether you're talking to council or actually in a grant application, is try to avoid generic statements. For example, In regards to economic and cultural impact, I've had some people state Ontario's cultural sector has been shown to generate over 25 billion in GDP annually, with live music events playing a crucial role in driving cultural tourism. That's a nice statement. It has some impact. And for me, it's a nice to have. But the need to have would be, how does your festival relate to that statement? And you can pull some of those numbers from your TREIM study and also from your success stories in your community. And again, it's all about that art of storytelling. Another one for hotel accommodations, instead of drilling down and getting the numbers of rooms, I've actually had some applications state over 1,500 rooms were available during our festival. That's kind of nice, but you didn't tell me how many rooms were filled because of your event. So again, always think about not only the nice to have, but the need to have. And the stronger data you have, you're going to show the strength of your event in your community and the impact that it has. So moving forward, we always encourage you to reach out to your regional development advisor. There's 10 other people besides me around the province that cover off the tourism side. And we also have 30 community regional development advisors that can help you even on cultural capacity of your festival and special events. So please reach out to them. Next slide. And we'll talk a little bit about with some of our panelists too, is where TREIM can be used. Obviously, in developing sponsorship strategies in your marketing plans, council presentations, public relations activities, grant applications, which I've given you some stories from that, and potential RTO partnership programs. Because some RTOs actually have programs where they allocate funds to festivals, and part of the requirement is using the TREIM economic impact model. So please keep that in mind. Well, that is the end of the presentation per se. Now we're going to get into the panel. And we have 4 distinguished guests that I would like to thank for joining us. Kelly is here from the Town of Amherstburg. Mark is here from PM Entertainment and the Blue Water Border Fest. Pam Mulholland, arriving from Vancouver from the Juno Awards, because Hamilton is hosting the Juno Awards next year, which is exciting. And Kristyn is here from the Geary Art Crawl and Nota. So welcome to the 4 of you. I thought I would start in the sunny south today in Amherstburg. So Kelly, you're on first. And Kelly and I work together quite a bit because she's in my geographic territory. And we go back many years through a few festivals. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Open Air, the Open Air Festival, which is a 3-day event which occurs on 15 consecutive weekends from May till September. So that's quite an undertaking. So Kelly, if you want to join us on screen, and I'm hoping that we can talk about how you collect data and maybe what new things you're looking at doing and collecting data coming in 2025.
Great. Hi, Darren. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about Amherstburg. We are in the sunny south. You can't get any further south than us. We collect data for our event called Open Air Weekends by having our students collect a minimum of 25 surveys per day. That results in about 1,200 surveys at the end of the program, and that's what gives us the demographics of all of our visitors. Then we also have students clicker counting, a minimum of 2 hours a day on Friday, 3 hours a day on Saturday, and 2 hours a day on Sunday. And the hours vary, and that gives us a really good idea of the numbers we have, and we can use that data to find out what our total count was for the entire event. We use this data to present to council because this event became a little contentious and we had some naysayers, and it was really valuable to have data that was fairly strong, and we're very conservative in our numbers when we present to council. Having the TREIM model oftentimes brings questions. people really question, you can't really have that much economic impact. So by having the data back it up and using it to explain where these numbers come from, it actually resulted this year in council approving the event for the term of, or for their full term, which is another 2 years. So lately, what we've been doing is getting approval for our program approximately 2 months before it started. So getting approval 2 years in advance allows us to book entertainment and be a lot more organized. So that was a huge boost for us. Now, moving forward in 2025, Darren spoke about this briefly, but his suggestion to us at a recent meeting in the fall was to do the large signage with QR codes throughout the event, offering pricing in exchange basically for your postal code. So this is going to give us an even stronger data presentation to council in the future. So that's where we're headed.
And you have emails, hopefully too, from that
Absolutely.
you can start doing some, shout outs throughout the year about
Right.
what's going on.
We've also connected with our local DMO, and they have a program for analyzing the postal codes we will collect. And this data will therefore not only benefit Amherstburg, but the DMO as a whole.
That's good. And one story, Kelly mentioned, we had a meeting last fall of all the municipal event planners in Windsor, Essex, and Chatham, Kent. And we were at a new boutique hotel called Story. And it was interesting because I got a tour of the boutique hotel with the municipal staff. And in talking to Lori, the owner, she talked about the reason why they picked Amherstburg and why they picked this location. And one of the key economic factors was the number of special events and festivals that happen in the town of Amherstburg and the draw for people outside coming into the community. So right now they have a boutique hotel of 6 rooms, I think it is, Kelly. And not only have they bought this old facility, old building, and converted into spectacular 6 individual spectacular rooms, but now they bought the building across the road, of which they can add an elevator lift because they're tight on space in the current site. So they're going to have a second location across the road that will be accessible, handicap getting up to the second floor, but also it'll be pet friendly, because another thing in the market definitely is people want to travel with their pets, especially after COVID, because we have so many pets that only know about people at home and never being by themselves. So it was just interesting. And she said right there, I sort of asked her, and she would be totally willing anytime to go to council and to say why they picked Amherstburg, because this is where they wanted to be, because of all of the things that are going on in the town. And, kudos to your team that, 15 consecutive weeks, doing open air plus all your other events. So, you probably have 200 event nights, out of 365 in a year with your small team. So it's getting those stories and having them in your back pocket so that when you're in a conversation, you can say, oh, by the way, you may want to talk to this person. So
hey, Darren,
thank you for
can
saying.
I jump in just with a quick question?
Sure.
And Kelly mentioned it. And I think last year was probably the biggest year for people from your ministry contacting me and challenging some TREIMs and the numbers. And Kelly mentioned it, how it was challenged at her council and stuff like that. So it's important that you're not just grabbing these numbers from air. You have to have the data to back it up and to support it. And at what level will you guys go back and check or cross-reference that data?
To Kelly?
To you, sorry, to the ministry.
Well, I think the strongest way for you to do it is actually tell the stories to justify the amount that comes in the report. Definitely. The more stories you have, the stronger it just reinforces. That's why, we sort of picked those 3 categories: the accommodation, arts and entertainment, the food and beverage. Focus on those 3. Tell us, 1 or 2 stories about each, and that'll just justify your statements. And if you have stories, like Lori said about the reason why you want to locate us because of the festivals and special events, that helps. And you'll hear a little bit more, I think, from some of the other panelists too on that. So let's go up the highway and over a little bit to Mark. Mark is from PM Entertainment and Blue Water Border Fest. And Mark, if you can tell us about your data collection and your partnerships with two individuals, the DM, Tourism Sarnia Lambton, and the International Entertainment Buyers Association.
Yeah, so happy to share. Thanks for having me on the panel. Happy to share our best practices with all events. Myself, I've had experience working with Feld Entertainment, working with Clear Channel Entertainment, Live Nation Entertainment, and probably altogether from all that have done 20, 25 years of events all across North America. So data collection is huge, huge in all events. I think from an event management standpoint, everyone should be focusing on data collection for, how an event operates, and then obviously how that feeds in. And, I think the number one thing is when you're gathering any of the data, especially, I think postal codes are number one from your user, obviously to get things like the TREIM reports and put everything together. But I think it's being, what we see a lot of is essentially from the data collection, how are we challenged with getting, obviously you have your tickets as kind of a number one in any event that you can collect that data from, but then how you can export and how you can work with some third-party organizations. So there's different associations. One you mentioned there, the International Talent Buyers Association. So every agency that essentially reps or manages artists has access to artist information data as well. So you can access the data on what average ticket sales cost. You can access box office reports from previous events through that. You can essentially then take that data that you can get access to and really make key decisions. On what works and what's going to work in different markets and what's going to be strategic or not strategic for your marketplace. So it's working with those third parties on the different opportunities. But if you can essentially get sometimes upwards to 50 or even 100 different box office reports that have been in the last 10 years for different artists or different event history, you can go through that and make a lot more educated guesses on, hey, what are the average, what do average tickets sell for? Obviously not to price yourselves out of a market, but to stay in the market and have realistic costs and expectations on your events.
So how do you do it at your local festival? How are you collecting data?
Yeah, so I have a locus. Ticket sales would be number one for that. That's basically from a standpoint of collecting. Really, anytime we're doing it, it's looking at the postal codes as gathering that information. From there, obviously, we can generate what are American, what are that 40-kilometer inwards, 40-kilometer outwards, and then produce our reports accordingly.
And because you're a border community, what is the percentage of your U.S. attendance?
Yeah, so it varies based on, I think from a marketing standpoint, it varies if you have American acts versus Canadian acts, obviously, what you're targeting. But from a standpoint of when you do have U.S. acts, you can obviously target deeper into the U.S. from bringing it over. So I mean, it ranges from as high, we've seen as high as in the 20% range, and we've seen probably as low as into the 3-4% range over the years. So big variation, but that all goes back to what are kind of those stats and what are those ticket history on those artists? Are they getting airplay essentially in the U.S. market or in the Canadian market? And then how do you build your marketing strategy based on that data collection?
Okay, great. Now we're going to go from the 402, 401 to 403 and talk to Pam from Hamilton. And Pam, again, how you're collecting data and how you're using the data. And then if you can talk a little bit about Destination International and the tool that you use.
Yes, thank you for having me on your panel. So I work for Tourism Hamilton. We are a division within the Planning and Economic Development Department at the City of Hamilton. So we have sales staff that are attracting and bidding on business for meetings and conventions, for sports tournaments, sports festivals and events. We just hosted 2 Grey Cups. And then for culture festivals and events. So we have various staff, and our funding source for grants to events that we're bringing in, or bid fees, or municipal goods and services that are supporting events, is a municipal accommodation tax. 50% goes to the City of Hamilton, so we are going to council with requests for certain MAT funds, and then a nonprofit, Hamilton Tourism Development Corporation, gets the other 50%. So we have to have the data and backing and economic impact information with respect to what we are requesting funding from for those for the municipal accommodation tax, which is derived from overnight stays at hotels, motels, short-term rentals. So that's where our funding comes from, and this is why data is very important for us when we're going to make those requests to support what we want to attract to the City of Hamilton. So in terms of the data and how we collect it to put into a TREIM, and then I'll mention another event impact calculator we use. Overnight hotel stays. We work with our event producers, whether that's Golf Canada bringing the RBC Canadian Open, or CFL for Grey Cups, or Caris for Junos, to block hotel rooms. So initially, before, when we're bidding on something or going into a partnership with Caris, it's my job to go to the hotels and say, I need these room blocks for media, for production crews, or convention delegates. So this isn't fans. These are the rooms that the producer needs. And then we negotiate a room rate. So before we have the event, we know. So for Junos, for example, we have 12 hotels holding blocks, all various room rates. So after the event is over, the hotels give us that data. How many, and the event producer, how many rooms did you have, and what were the costs of the rooms? And so we can put those inputs in. I know another Alberta municipality that also works with their hotels. When you arrive at the hotel and you check in, and they say, and what are you here for? You say, I'm here for the Canadian Country Music Awards. So that some hotels are collecting that fan data of who's checking in and providing back, but we don't do that yet. So we have hotel data. Our event producers, if it's a ticketed event, give us ticket purchases by postal code. So Golf Canada does that for the RBC Canadian Open, and we run those postal codes by numbers of tickets, so we know where the ticketed event people are coming from, 40 kilometers away or not, because that's one of the inputs you can put in. You know, you put in your event, the dates of the event, how many people are from out of town, like what percentage is that? And so for ticketed events, we get it from the postal codes. For unticketed events in the past, we have hired, I think Kelly touched on this, we have hired people to survey people at free events with a number of survey questions, one of which is, where are you from? And so that is another way to get the, unticketed data, if you can provide those inputs. And then other inputs we put into ours are how much we spend on an event, a bid fee, municipal supports, and our third-party producers that are coming into the city tell us how much they spend. So Caris was just in Vancouver. How much did Caris spend on production crews, audio, visual, tech, all the staffing, catering? How much money did they put into that city for the event? So we have a number of inputs, and I mentioned most of the companies that we work with organization-wise, they use TREIM or they use STEAM. And the City of Hamilton, as of 2023, has an annual membership to Destination International's Event Impact Calculator. A lot of large cities in a lot of large DMOs where DMO use this calculator, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto, Mississauga. And the rationale for why we went and did that subscription is we were looking to report to council on specific event types and cross-event comparisons. So I mentioned we have meetings and conventions, we have sporting events, we have cultural events like Junos. We can run in Destination International a pre-event report saying this is what the economic impact we believe looks like based on these data, and then post-event. Destination International's inputs are Hamilton calculator with localized data. So what is our tax rates? What's our municipal common tax rate? And it's simple to use in that you only need 5 inputs, kind of like TREIM. The more accurate data you have, the better, as Darren has said. But if you don't have it, what Destination International's calculator they've developed for Hamilton does is it learns from itself. So because we've already done 2 Grey Cups, it pulls data from that event to populate, or from the GTHA. So they're like, okay, Hamilton, you're now in a belt of hotels, and that's where it gets a lot of its other data. The economic impact numbers have been lower than TREIM when we run it in both models. But like I said, that's because we're paying $6,000 a year to run 3 models through Destinations International: sports, meetings and conventions, and festivals and events. So you can pick one, you can pick all 3 in a package. So that's sort of the route we went, and we're learning from it. The other thing I would suggest to people too, if you have a large festival, like for example, Grey Cup, we ran data for the economic impact for the festival. And then we ran a separate day for the game day, because the game day, it's professional, it's ticketed, it's 30,000 people. So then you have, and the same thing would be true of Juno's for the awards broadcast. You've got 12,000 people in an arena and it's ticketed. And then the other part of Juno Week, may have different inputs, and then you can put them together, or you can speak to them separately. So that's the journey we've been on. I recommend people go destinationsinternational.org. They have videos that talk about the calculator, what it does, what you can learn from, and whether it's of use to you. But like I said, TREIM and STEAM, we also still run those as well.
Terrific, thank you. And now heading to Toronto, and Kristyn is with the Geary Art Crawl. And Kristyn, if you can just talk about your waste management data collection. I think that's very intriguing, that festivals may not even consider using. And then your cross-data confirmation.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Pam, I'm really excited to attend the Junos in Hamilton next year, now that it'll be a little closer to home again. I work for a festival called the Geary Art Crawl, and that's presented by my organization, Nota Culture, as well as produced. But we also produce quite a large festival in Toronto called the Do West Fest. Both of those festivals are street festivals, so they're not gated at all. And it's a particular challenge to try to figure out attendance data. So from 2017 to 2019, my operations lead worked with a team from TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University, or Ryerson at the time, and the Federal Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change on a research project that was based around festival and event waste and environmental management policies. And through that project, they were able to create a waste report with working with municipal disposal of festival waste, and in all categories: green, recycling, garbage, as well as human waste. And they were able to actually create a metric to calculate how many visitors created how much waste on an average over those 3 editions of one festival. And we've been able to use that for both the Geary Art Crawl and Do West Fest since 2021 to come up with a total that we then cross-reference with data. We use a company specifically in Toronto called AccuTraffic. They provide basically, it's like a camera that does traffic counting, and it will count across certain major intersections that are the major entrance and egress from the festival. They provide us with a huge data set that we then we extrapolate over the entire festival. So that right there are 2 points of data: the waste and the traffic counters. And then in addition to that, we of course, like everyone else, use surveys as well as some free yet registered events to try to collect registration info, of course, and QR codes, tools like Linktree, Bitly, and direct website visits. And those will all help us create a percentage of tourists versus local visitors that we can then look at the total number based on the waste numbers and the traffic counters and come up with our total. So many different datas all working together.
Great. Well, thank you. And to all 4 panelists, you shared some different stories. And I think that's why I picked you, because you have some great stories there, and they're all different because there's many ways to collect data and how to use data. And maybe you've learned some new ways to collect data that you may want to put into your future festival. So Dave, we'll turn it back over to you to wrap up.
Yeah, and just quickly, if anybody else has any questions, I've been monitoring the chat and there's nothing there, which is usually a good sign that you've covered most things. One quick question I had for you, Darren. Are we able to share your PowerPoint with people as we distribute ways to listen and watch?
Yeah, so, you can do that.
Yeah, so hopefully Jay will be able to attach the PowerPoint to any notes that he sends out for where people can catch the podcast, especially for those listening to it, that they'll have a cross-reference for that. Thank you very much to you and your panel. Very insightful and a very important tool. I mean, so often data collection is a must-do for grants and stuff like that, but we really don't dig into it and use it as the powerful tool that it is. And I love your idea of storytelling and doing the deep dive and getting into that information, because those stories are important for our industry and the growth, and to help us sustain the Experience Ontario granting models and to grow what we're giving out through that. And I think all of this helps with our as we go in and pitch for more money, these stories certainly back it up and help that ask. So thank you very much to you and your panel. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. And just one final reminder, please reach out to your regional development advisor and have a conversation with them and make them aware of your event. And you never know what can happen in the future when you start working with them.
And Darren, if people don't know who their advisor is, where would they find that?
I believe the link is in the slide deck. And Jay, did you put it in the comment section or not? But we can ensure that maybe that's included in all correspondence too. Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Darren. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on FEO on the Air next week, April 8th. Join us when Jay Nyhouse hosts Sponsor Spotlight. His guests will be North Star Fireworks with Patrice Guy and Dustin Hadley, and they'll be talking about drone shows, fireworks, and everything as we come up to our May 24th weekend and celebrations. Thank you again, and we look forward to talking to you every Tuesday on FEO on the Air.
Thanks for listening to FEO on the Air, the voice of festivals and events in Ontario.